She was the kind of woman the world rarely noticed, quiet in her steps, gentle in her voice, and soft in her presence. People passed her every day without understanding the depth of strength she carried in her bones. Her name was Amara, and her life was a constant rhythm of giving, caring, and tending to those who had learned to depend on her. She lived in the shadows of hospital corridors, where exhaustion blended with compassion, where sleepless nights were traded for fragile smiles, and where her own needs were often tucked away behind the needs of others. She carried her burdens in silence, financial strain, loneliness that curled around her heart at night, and responsibilities that felt heavier than her own fragile frame. Yet through it all, she moved with a quiet resilience, the kind that made the world feel a little less harsh when she walked into a room. She was unnoticed, untouched by power, unprotected by privilege, but unbroken. And then came the morning when everything changed. The hospital doors opened, and a man was wheeled in, a man whose name carried weight, whose presence demanded attention even in weakness. He was Cashin Ward, a billionaire known more for his empire than his humanity, a man whose reputation was built from stone, steel, and unimaginable loss. He arrived pale, breath shallow, shadows under his eyes that whispered of a lifetime spent fighting battles few ever saw. And while people rushed around him, assessing, diagnosing, whispering with curiosity, he saw only one person clearly. Amara. Their first interaction wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. It was a simple moment. Her adjusting his blanket with gentleness unlike anything he'd been shown in years. Something in that small gesture softened a man the world believed had no tenderness left. And something in his eyes made Amara pause, as if recognizing a pain she had known in her own way. Days passed, and their connection grew naturally, quietly. When the hospital fell still at night and distant monitors hummed steady rhythms in the dark, Cashin spoke. Not with authority, not with command, but with honesty. The kind that only comes from a heart too tired to keep secrets. Amara listened. She listened when others pretended. She noticed things others ignored. And slowly, he began to trust her in ways he had never trusted anyone in a very long time. She became the only person he sought with his eyes when fear settled in his chest, the only presence that calmed the storm inside him. But beneath the softness of their growing bond, a darker reality waited. His family hovered like cold shadows. Polished, wealthy, sculpted by power, yet hollow where love should have lived. They came not out of concern, but out of habit and obligation. They brought tension with every visit, filling the room with unspoken accusations, veiled resentment, and calculations of inheritance. Arguments seeped through closed doors. Raised voices slipped through hallways. Wealth, legacy, and control were debated as though the man lying between them was a business asset rather than a brother. Amara watched from the quiet edges, unnoticed but never unaware. She saw the cracks in their golden facade, the greed simmering beneath their polite tones. And she felt, even before she understood everything, that she was being watched, judged, warned. One evening, as rain tapped softly against the windows, Cashin whispered to her the truth he had never shared with anyone else. A truth that carried the weight of his entire life. He told her of a love lost, a child he never had the chance to raise, and a promise he failed to keep. He revealed the pain he had buried under years of wealth and power, a pain that had shaped every decision, every wall, every guarded moment. He showed her the photograph he kept close, a young woman with a child in her arms, a moment from a life that had slipped through his grasp. He spoke of regret, of the years he tried to search for them, of the forces that worked against him, and of the hope he clung to even as his health faded. Then came the night when everything changed forever. Amara found a hidden letter, his handwriting shaky but determined. A letter describing a child he lost, a love he failed to protect, and a betrayal that altered the course of his life. Shock washed over her as she realized why he trusted her. Why he looked at her the way he did. Why he held her hand with a desperation that went beyond fear of death. He chose her for a reason. He believed she would finish what he could not. But the world around her shifted. Suspicious eyes followed her. Whispers coiled like smoke behind her back. Someone watched her in the parking lot, silent and still. Supervisors questioned her every move. Cashin grew weaker, his breath shorter, his eyes dimmer. And just when fear felt too heavy, Cashin called her to his side one last time. His voice, fragile and fading, carried the final request that would change the course of her existence. He told her he knew his time was slipping away. He told her she was the only one he could trust. And he asked her, begged her, to find his daughter before his family found her first. With trembling hands and tears she tried to hide, she promised him she would. A promise he clung to with his final breath. A promise she made with all the strength left inside her. When he died, the world erupted. The hospital filled with chaos. The Ward family arrived with lawyers before the grief had even settled over his body. Accusations were thrown like knives. They blamed her, threatened her, dismissed her, attempting to crush her under the weight of their power. But instead of breaking, she grew stronger. She turned pain into resolve. She walked away from the hospital and into Cashin's past, following a trail he had quietly prepared for her long before he died. She visited the neighborhood where he grew up, finding pieces of the boy he once was. She met people who loved him when he had nothing. She uncovered letters, memories, photographs, each one guiding her closer to the truth. She found the art studio where Liana once painted, discovered the portrait of their child, and read notes Cashin had hidden away, trusting that one day someone would complete what he began. Each clue led to the next, each discovery pulling her deeper into his history. She learned of the love that shaped him, the betrayal that ruined him, the power that hardened him, and the daughter who carried his eyes. The more she uncovered, the more she understood him. And the more she understood him, the more determined she became. Then came the day when truth and greed collided. The Ward family summoned her into their towering boardroom, a battlefield of polished floors and sharpened words. They attacked her reputation, questioned her motives, and tried to bury her under legal threats and cold intimidation. But she did not come to defend herself. She came to defend him. With nothing but a photograph and Cashin's letters, she placed the truth onto their precious table. And in that moment, their power cracked. Their fear surfaced. They saw the truth not as a wound, but as a threat to their empire. But Amara walked out stronger than she had ever been. She no longer feared them. She no longer feared their wealth, their threats, or their shadows. She walked out carrying something far more powerful, the truth, and the promise of a man she genuinely cared for. Her journey led her to a quiet town by the sea, where she finally found the girl he had spent a lifetime searching for. A girl with Cashin's eyes, Cashin's quiet sadness, Cashin's unspoken strength. And as Amara placed the photograph and the final letter into her hands, the world shifted. A heart once lost was found. A story once buried was uncovered. A wound once deep began to heal. In that gentle reunion, Cashin's final wish was fulfilled. And the girl who believed she had been abandoned finally learned the truth. That she had been loved, sought, and cherished from the moment she took her first breath. Amara returned home carrying the weight of closure and the warmth of new beginnings. Her life, once shaped by exhaustion and quiet suffering, unfolded into something softer and more meaningful. She found peace in simplicity, comfort in routine, and strength in the memory of a man who saw her in ways no one else ever had. She honored his memory in the places that shaped his past. She supported the daughter he never got to hold. And she walked into a future no longer burdened by fear, but illuminated by purpose. On the final day of her journey, she stood on a hill overlooking the city, the wind brushing through her hair, the sky glowing with the colors of a new dawn. And in the silence, she realized something deeply, profoundly true. In fulfilling his wish, she found her own healing. In carrying his truth, she discovered her strength. And though Cashin Ward had long left the world, His echo lived inside her, in the kindness she gave. In the lives she touched. And in the story that changed her forever. Because some endings do not close a book. Some endings leave a light behind. A light bright enough to guide the rest of a lifetime. And so Amara walked forward. Not with sorrow. But with peace. A life forever changed.